Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
Rachel Weiss,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Present.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricke,
Yes.
Patsy Ko-Johns.
Yes.
8 present.
Okay, would you please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Information regarding the Open Meetings Act is posted on the east wall of this room on the south side of the door. We do live web streaming, and that's available through the State Board of Education website, www.education.ne.gov/stateboard. And I remind you to please engage your microphones before speaking and turn them off when you are finished. And please, everyone, turn off personal cell phones. We will move to the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the April 6th and 7th meeting?
I make the motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. Denise? See, I'm reading the script. Brenda? I'll probably do that several times. Yes.
Rachel Weiss,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran,
Yes.
John Witzel,
Yes.
Lisa Fricke,
Yes.
Patsy Ko-Johns.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you. We will move on to the approval of the agenda. Commissioner, do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, there are actually a couple changes as a result of kind of some carryover from yesterday. The first part is that the Legislative Committee update will be carried to, from item 4.4 from yesterday to item 7.5 today. And then the Strategic Planning Report was item 4.5 yesterday and will be 7.7 today. We'll take on about 3 short items from the retreat agenda, which were items 7B, 8, and 9, just underneath that strategic planning committee meeting. I don't believe I have any other, empty box. So we're good to go otherwise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to approve today's agenda?
Move the agenda as altered there. As altered.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Brenda? Patrick made the motion and Molly was the second.
Rachel Weiss,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
John Witzel,
Yes.
Lisa Fricke,
Yes.
Patsy Ko-Johns,
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes. Okay, we will move into our public comment period. Thanks to our public for attending today. Such a lovely day to be sitting inside. We don't have any requests for the 10-minute appearance, but I do have 4 requests for public comment. And I have the cards and we'll do them in the order that they were given to me. We ask that you approach the podium, make sure the microphone is turned on, and you will have 5 minutes to speak. Gina Miller, please.
Pat, if I may.
Yes.
You have an amateur running the remote, so I'm going to try this. If for some reason I'm failing, I might have to find a backup strategy here. So
Yeah.
we'll see how this goes.
We're all kind of amateur today.
We'll get through it, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Thank you, Commissioner Bloomstead, President Tim, and the State Board of Education. I'm Gina Miller. I'm a public school parent in Omaha, Nebraska. I think I'm going to be preaching mostly to the choir here today, but I did want to come and speak to you today about LB 651, the Reading Improvement Act that was pulled from committee this week at the legislature. I did go and testify at the Education Committee as a parent in opposition to this bill. I have actually gone and testified against this bill for the last 3 years, or the last 3 times that it has been presented. I'm going to read for you just very quickly. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me 1 second. I do have handouts. I'm sorry.
While you're doing that, I can't figure out the timer. I'll say 1 minute when we're down to 1 minute.
You just
okay?
keep letting me go, Commissioner Bloomstead. I'm really, as this group knows, I'm really good about controlling my own time. So I will read very quickly. I did pass around the testimony that I gave, and also another parent that I work with very closely in educational issues, and her extremely thoughtful letter to the senators. I'm here today to oppose LB 65, the Reading Improvement Act. I do believe that Senator Linehan is trying in good faith to address an issue of too many children who are moving through our school systems and graduating who are not reading at grade level, and in some instances are far below grade level. I would like to thank her for her efforts. Unfortunately, I am disappointed that she has reintroduced basically the same bill that has been introduced for the last 3 years with minor modifications, only for reducing the price tag of this bill, not addressing the parental concerns that have been expressed year after year. The following are some of my concerns when this bill was introduced in 2015 and 15. I do not believe retention is the answer. We do not help failing systems by punishing the kids who are being failed by the system. There have been numerous studies to show that retention does not work and oftentimes hurts the child. I do not believe that this should be state law, but should be handled at a local school district level through policy, practice, and correct curriculum. Things that can be molded and shaped by parents and school officials as necessary, not a stringent, unyielding, often misapplied law. I do not think that any reading reform should ever happen without first having the state acknowledge that dyslexia is a disability and that all schools should provide screening and services for dyslexia. I think teaching phonemic awareness is critical and should not just be given to children who are struggling readers, but all children. I think that only decision on whether a child is reading at grade level is not a standardized test, but a discussion about the body of work the child is doing in the school. That discussion is between the school, the classroom teacher, the parent, and should be based on growth, not a single test. I question, what do kids who failed a reading test but perform at grade level in all of their other courses what do they do when they are retained? Do they repeat all of the courses, even the ones that they had previously passed? I know that children learn at different speeds and in different ways. I believe the parent should be the lead in their child's education in collaboration with their classroom teacher and local school administration, not a standardized test or a well-intended law. This is way more to this bill than just a retention piece. There are testings for ESL students, there are parental contracts, provisions for what appears to be required summer school, before and after school requirements, exemptions for not retaining a child can only be granted by the superintendent, not the parent, classroom teacher, and local school administration. I will add, at this time, I am opposing this bill, but I do stand willing and ready to work with the senator along with groups of concerned parents and reading experts and dyslexia experts that I have ready to go to address issues of kids who are struggling with reading deficits in our schools while at the same time protecting parental rights and protecting kids. Let's work to create a bill that focuses on the, I think I said this wrong, effect instead of the end cause. In her closing, or after I left the podium, the senator actually stopped me, was sitting right behind me. I happen to know Senator Linehan, asked me to thank me for my comments, and then in her closing statement said on mic that she would be reaching out to me to work on this bill. To date, after several attempts to contact the senator, she has yet to contact me. I am working with some other senators that are doing some things on this bill and trying to get some verbiage to them that I would like to see written. We have to change this bill. This came out of committee. I want everybody to have a wake-up call. This bill has huge support on the floor. This bill is going to be voted in, and it cannot be voted in this particular version. I need help, and I need this retention piece out of here. I need this to be parent-focused. I need this student-led. I need this growth of work. But we do have a problem. We have a significant problem in my district of children not being able to read. The senator is trying to get something done.
Time.
She is not doing it in the right direction. I would be very open to questions.
Time. Thanks, Ms. Miller. Now I got a fancy dance song going.
I will dance my way out.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. There, I would love to.
I'll explain. I know a lot of times people, when they finish with their public comment, ask the board if they have any questions. And because it's not an agenda item, we can't have a public discussion, but we usually take a break after public comment, and that gives you a chance to talk to individual board members. So we're not ignoring you.
I understand. I was just
but-
trying to squeak out a few more minutes.
Well, with me as the timer, that's possible.
Where my
Yes,
public was,
yes.
so I was. Right, exactly.
Okay. All right, our next request is from Jay Sears. Jay?
Good morning. For the record, I'm Jay Sears, and I represent the 28,000 educator members of the Nebraska State Education Association. I want to thank Gina for coming and doing her testimony about 651 and the fact that it got pulled out of committee, which is an unusual thing on the legislature. And if you need somebody to work with, I'd be glad to work with you. But on to the other things that are not so political. First of all, thank you all who were able to attend our 150th anniversary. No, I wasn't the founding person back down in Brownville, but I feel pretty close to it, having worked with NSEA for 33 years, and this is my 45th year in education. So thank you all for coming, and I was appreciative of, I got assigned to the table with Pat Tim and her lovely, exciting, and I tried to make some points with the judge in Gage County, so that when I speed through there, maybe at least I'll get to do a stop class. Yeah, that's right, yeah. I doubt it, so that, I tried to go around Gage County, but that's okay. The other thing I'd like to share with you is sometime this week, I can't remember when because we've sent out so many email alerts to our members, but we sent out an email to our 28,000 educator members that we have emails for, inviting them one more time to take part in the survey of the ESSA plan, or ESSA. I hate to say ESSA because I get caught up in all those weird terms. And it sounds too much like ESEA, which is really the original term for the bill. So you should be seeing an uptick on your surveys. Also, because most of the testing is over in the classrooms, teachers might have time to breathe if we'd quit sending them emails about such things as retirement and those types of things. But the main purpose for me to speak to you today is the action items, and I thank Maureen and her team and all the support from the department, especially Dr. Foy and her assessment team, and all of the input that you've worked with in school districts. Who could have believed, in 2009 that we'd be where we're going to be today after your affirmative vote on the assessment contracts that are coming out. I was able to spend some time last week out in the territory with real people, my members, the teachers that teach every day in the classroom. And I said, I just got the draft of the agenda for the state board, and the state board is going to vote on a contract with NWEA for the summative assessment for grades 3 through 8. And I thought, the great second coming was coming because teachers understand, and as you said, as Valerie said yesterday, a large percentage of our school districts are using NWEA as formative assessments in their classrooms, and they see the alignment coming, and they see the power of what's going to happen when we have adaptive assessments. And so, just looking over the history of where we've gone down, the pathway about assessment and not testing, assessment, so that we can improve instruction in the classroom, and I think this will be a great help. So when Maureen brings up 2A, 1, 2, 3, and 4, I hope you have an affirmative vote on that. I think that really sets us down the road that's going to be so powerful in the classrooms. So thank you for all of your work, all of the department's work, and all of the committees that you bring together so that I have a life and get paid on a monthly basis to come to meetings. But it's exciting to see this come to fruition. And so thank you very much for all of your work, all of your colleagues in the past that have worked on this also. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay.
And 512 is up early. So. And it's going to go.
Our next person wanting to make some comments is Rachel Pinkerton. Good morning, Mrs. Pinkerton.
Good morning.
Yes, Mrs. Pinkerton, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Your first handout will be a copy of Colonel Witzel's opinion piece from the April 28th Omaha World Herald. He describes the University of Nebraska Medical Center's Science Festival, encouraging our young people to venture on a journey exploring the wonders of science, technology, engineering, and math. We need to keep this challenge in mind as we prepare to update our science standards. As Henry Burke has explained, the next generation science standards make a poor basis for our standards going forward. Stan Metzenberg, PhD, professor of biology at California State University, Northridge, has extensive international experience devising and reviewing standards. He finds the next generation science standards as unworthy of consideration due to errors, inaccuracies, and gaps, such as no high school exposure to the nucleus, mitochondria, or chloroplasts. Broadly, he charges that the standards are largely unintelligible because of abuses of the language and sometimes grammatically incorrect. Jennifer Helms, PhD, RN, Arkansans for Education Freedom, points out, as has our own Henry Burke, that NGSS lacks sufficient chemistry for a standalone high school chemistry class and offers no high school physics. Dr. Himes further decries an emphasis on junk science to support a political climate change agenda, a topic that appears 58 times in the standards, while electrical circuit is mentioned only once in an elementary standard. Again, to repeat Henry Burke's observation, Helms points out that NGSS ranks 26th on Fordham Institute's list of science standards, even though Fordham's Common Core connection should predispose them to look as favorably as possible on NGSS. To equip our youth for the quest that John Witzel challenges them to pursue, we need to abandon inferior standards in favor of strong standards, arming our kids with mastery of the scientific method and math adequate to pursue STEM opportunities. My other handout is the voting record from this week's successful motion by Senator Linehan that Gina was telling us about to place LB 651 on general file. Though hearing testimony in the Education Committee was overwhelmingly negative and the committee held no discussion about advancing it, the motion passed, and it's expected that this bill will be scheduled to come to the floor this session. Vote results don't necessarily reflect senators' position on the merits of the bill. Some like the measure but voted no in objection to the process. Some yes votes could reflect less enthusiasm for this specific bill than for the Nebraska Reading Improvement Act to be debated to bring attention to this issue. I've been losing sleep with worry over disastrous unintended consequences inherent in this bill. A high-stakes standardized test dictating third grade retention over the objections of parents and teachers is government overreach with generational implications. Given our achievement gap, a disproportionate number of children whose families lack social capital would end up being held back, even when those who know the children best and care about them most might be aware of reasons why retention would be counterproductive. Help, as Gina said, help, please. I know we have Donlyn Rice, and she's an expert on these matters. So if we're to have a reading bill this session, let it purge harmful teaching methods and mandate phonics for all. Scientifically sound instruction combined with parent and teacher-friendly interventions will promote literacy without destructive consequences. Thank you.
Our next request is Mrs. Deb Anders. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Deb Andrews, 1235 A Street in Lincoln. I too am opposed to the reading bill, and I hope that something can be done about that. It's ridiculous to focus on third grade for students to be able to read. That is something that they should accomplish in kindergarten. I've been up here many times, and there have been lots of studies and books written about this. Reading rests upon primitive neuronal mechanisms preserved over the course of evolution. They're born with those pathways ready for reading. Dr. Quentin Atkinson of the University of New Zealand in Auckland tracked phonemes, distinct units of sound, back to Southwest Africa 50,000 years. So we have evolved for reading and phonemes, distinct units of sound. The same brain area in humans all over the world is activated with reading, regardless of language. The letter box is on the left side. Sight words utilize another area of the brain. So when sight words are taught early, it cripples the child. When you mix phonics and sight words, you ensure the child is crippled for reading. Some children are so crippled then for life. Others, it can be overcome. Like when you have a stroke and the left side doesn't work. And if they tape down the right side and work with you 10 hours a day for 10 years, you can get motion back on the left side. Same thing. Let's skip that part and just teach phonics and only phonics first. It's not the teacher's fault. The teachers' colleges also teach sight words. The curriculum has sight words in it, so it's a curriculum and instruction issue, but the children are punished, some for life. In 1844, Samuel Green wrote for the 7th annual report of the Honorable Horace Mann, Secretary of the Massachusetts Board of Education. Sight reading had been adopted by the Boston primary schools in 1837 and produced a literacy disaster. Dr. Samuel Orton in 1929 wrote for the Journal of Educational Psychology, the sight reading method of teaching reading as a source of reading disability, your dyslexia. It causes that. Rudolph Flesch wrote in 1955, Why Johnny Can't Read. You must teach phonics and only phonics first, but it was before that we had the brain research. He was like a prophet, he didn't know that. 1981, Flesch's second book, Why Johnny Still Can't Read. You must teach phonics and only phonics first. Letters and the sounds that they make. In 2009, now we have the brain research, thanks to Stanislas Dehaene. With MRI imaging, they could actually track how the brain reads. The letter box is on the left side. Letters and sounds. I have this just out from a teacher college. Would you like to hand out? Can I give it to you? In Lincoln, inviting children and their parents for reading skills programs this summer. The program for 4-year-olds and entering kindergartners learn to read phonics, sight words. So that cripples the child. This bill that focuses on reading by 3rd grade will merely expand the system and children will suffer. There's a new book out just published by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a revered institution. The title is Communism for Kids. When you can't read and you think you're too stupid, capitalism doesn't work for you. You may want to get a copy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Andrews. Okay, we will take a short break and then we will come back for our hearings. We will not discuss our cases until 10 when our attorney comes in. So we're going to adjust the agenda just a little bit again. And we're going to go to the report out on legislation. Rachel?
Thank you, Pat, and I want to thank our committee, Maureen, Molly, and Pat. We met yesterday and had quite a discussion on both state and federal legislation. I'd like Brian Halstead, excuse me, to come up so we can first talk a little bit, excuse me, about the updates that you have on state legislation, and then we'll take a few minutes to talk about federal legislation. And so Brian is going to give us some updates on things that have been happening across the street. And I know we also have some additional comments and discussion around a few of the key bills. So, Brian?
Good morning. Brian Halstead, Chief of Staff. Today is the 77th legislative day of the 105th legislature, which means they can only go 90 days, so we're getting closer to the end. In the big picture view of it, the mainline budget bills for the next biennium are now all on final reading. So we anticipate early next week they will take up all of the budget bills for the next biennium. They have to do that by next Wednesday because by rule that's the 80th legislative day. And so far we have absolutely no problems with the budget bills for the Department of Education and everything else that's going on. Had to update the document since yesterday because the legislature moved some bills yesterday that are on that list, so they're all updated as of this morning for bill status and everything else. They just actually got done bringing back LB 512 to fix a problem in the language of voluntary termination agreements, but they've adopted that. They moved it back to final reading, so we should see LB 512 on the agenda, final reading next week. They are right now actually debating LB 415, which is a bill to update and make numerous changes to retirement systems and everything else. I know the committee had a discussion about that bill yesterday, and I think I'll turn to Maureen for her comments on that, but they are right now debating LB 415 that's on general file.
Well, my comments mainly have to do with the part on the substitutes, where I found it interesting. I believe it was Monday when I was listening live stream. They zeroed in on school districts in the Omaha area, the 3 largest school districts, and talked about the great length of number of substitutes, long list that they had of substitutes in each of those districts. And, you know, basically what was the problem? They had plenty of substitutes. But I can tell you that the list may be long, but there's a lot of teachers in every one of those large districts. Even if you had a list of 500 for Omaha Public Schools, think about the number of teachers that are there that could never fill every position that maybe need to be filled in one day. They are unable to fill those positions. And it's even worse as you go out into the western part of Nebraska. They have few to no subs. And if this bill were to pass as it is, where if you left the district with some type of a compensation, you wouldn't be able to teach for 3 years. You wouldn't be able to teach in a school district in Nebraska for 3 years. You wouldn't be able to substitute in a school district in Nebraska for 3 years, let alone volunteer in a district for 3 years. Our communities, especially in western Nebraska, and I just don't want to zero in on central or western Nebraska, it is this entire state, cannot deal with that issue, cannot support it at all. When we think about substitutes, some of the main substitutes that most districts have are the ones that have recently retired from their school districts. And if they can't come back for 3 years, where are they going to be able to get substitutes? Because if you did retire at 65 or 66 and you have to wait out 3 years, your desire to go back is probably going to be nil. Or if you are already 70 years old and have been subbing, you're probably not going to want to be subbing for a whole lot more years. Not that they aren't quality teachers, but we need quality teachers. We need teachers that are able to deal with some of the issues of today. So I really concern myself around the issue of substitutes and the issue that this bill brings forth, because the difficulty in finding substitutes right now is very difficult across this entire state. A district that I am aware of had a teacher retire this last year, and they relied on him frequently to come back. He kept a very close track of the number of days that he had substituted. And yet, the retirement NPERS contacted him and said he had taught far too long, or substituted far too many days in that first 120, 180 days. And he came back for half days or whatever because the school district needed him. They had nobody else to call on. So he was doing the district a service, and yet he either had to pay back 3 months' worth of retirement, which is less than $2,000 a month, or not take a retirement check for 3 months. And he was faced with, he chose to not take a retirement check for 3 months. But here was a district that had one less substitute to be able to pick from. So I have grave concerns around this part of our bill dealing with 415. John?
Mo, if I may, quick question. What is the maximum amount of days that one can substitute?
It's a very gray area. In fact, I can't even think of the word that they use in the ruling. It starts with the letter I. Pardon me?
Intermittent.
Intermittent. And so, we asked, I've asked several times, I've asked administrators, what does the word intermittent really mean? Nobody can define it. But this gentleman obviously went far too many.
Well, is it district discretion in regards to the number of days? Or is it state?
It's intermittent.
It's the best we can do.
Okay.
It's the best
Thank
we
you.
can do, Pat, yeah, you're right. So, yeah, there are grave issues around 415 period
I think
overall.
Lisa has a question.
Go ahead.
My understanding, part of our job is to help students be successful. And in that mission, 415 takes away a lot of the supports that students have around the state. And when I think of the volunteers that are helping with after-school programs throughout the state, when I think of them coming in to read with elementary students, coming into schools to supplement and help a teacher with a particular area, or like a history teacher going into the English classroom and supporting the literature of the times and doing a historical piece, we are losing a lot of the supports that help make students successful. And that makes me very angry. I am sorry for the tone, but I really mean that this is a bad bill on so many levels that will hurt our students that we are supposed to value.
Thank you.
And Lisa,
Thanks.
I would agree with you. My words to senators when I wrote each of them was, this is a bad bill for kids, a bad bill for teachers, a bad bill for our communities.
Thank you, Maureen. Brian, we've got several other bills we want to talk about yet as state level. Brian?
Yeah, and this session, one of the things that Speaker Scheer did is every priority bill, regardless, would get 3 hours worth of debate. And one of those bills was LB 595, and this board discussed it thoroughly, took motions on it, and has no position on the bill. LB 595 did get its 3 hours of debate earlier this session. I think as the committee discussed, it brought up the whole issue of there are lots of dynamics going on in our schools, the social, emotional well-being of students, you've learned from the stakeholder engagement through AQuest and ESSA. That was another topic, and I know that Molly wanted to say something about 595.
We as a board spent a lot of time talking about LB 595, and I do think the priority is important because there is a problem with violence in our schools, and there's a problem with teachers feeling unsafe as well as the other children, and it does disrupt the classroom. However, this is really going nowhere as it is, and what we as a committee talked about is we want to really support the idea of having an interim study on this, because there is the issue of violence. This is probably not the best way to take care of. It's more symptomatic instead of taking care of the causes. So I would just really like to see what you think about that. Is that something the state board would like to encourage the unicameral to have, a study committee on the problem of this violence in the classroom?
In the time that I have been on the board in other activities that I did prior to this, I would certainly support an interim study because we need to address the cause instead of trying to put a Band-Aid on the problem. We have talked about this for all of the years that I've been here on the state board. We have a need for capacity in behavioral and emotional health, particularly with our younger constituents. You can get help sometimes when you're finally an adult, but by then sometimes it's too late, and it's very costly. And I think we need to get past the stigma of parents asking for help with their children. There isn't a book that comes with children. I wish there would have been. But there isn't a book that says this is how you do it. And our children have a much different lifestyle than you and I did growing up. And so I would certainly support an interim study.
Thank you. Closing comment too. I was home in North Platte and I was reading about the violence that just reoccurred again in Tecumseh. And unfortunately, some of these at-risk kids that are being discussed right now, if we don't be proactive and deal with those behavioral mental health issues, sometimes it just snowballs, and then it isn't just violence, but it's addiction and it's criminal behavior. So if the state board is supportive of that, I think that, yeah.
Does ESSA cover any of these behavioral issues that we're talking about right now?
For mental health supports in
Correct.
schools? Rachel, what do you think?
I don't know, and we can talk about the funding pieces coming up, so we'll talk about federal legislation in a few minutes. I think there are limitations and we shouldn't look there. I think part of the value of a legislative resolution for a study and why the committee talked about it yesterday and feels it's important is because we need to own the responsibilities of what we're going to do. And LB 595, though we didn't necessarily all concur that it was the correct direction, I think we concurred that there's an important concept that was presented, and we, in our responsibility, need to determine how can we take some action around that, and how can we partner with the legislature in a discussion, a meaningful discussion, about what to do around not just violence, but around the issues of behavioral challenges and needs of kids today in our schools, and how we can better support students and support teachers in the instructional processes.
Good.
Right.
To answer your question, yes. And if you would, is it a motion appropriate? If it is, I would suggest that you make it, and I'd second it.
Yeah, I don't know that we need a motion right now. It was more of a report out from our committee that that's a recommendation of where we're going, and we'll be bringing it back forward for more discussion. But at this point, to just, as a committee, start the process of recommending and encouraging study. And if that doesn't occur, then it'll come back to determine what our next steps would be.
Excuse me.
Oh, go
Well,
ahead.
Is there a timeliness issue on the board acting on this before the legislature adjourns?
Well, I think the legislature has rules about interim studies. I believe they all have to be introduced or filed by the 80th or 80th day, I believe. I'd have to go back to the rules. And there have been a number of interim studies introduced, and I know there's been discussion about this topic needs to be looked at. So in the sense of, we certainly can reach out to the chair of the committee to see if he intends to do an interim study on this, or how he intends to work on the issue that he's raised with 595 and everything, and we'd certainly be willing to work with him on drafting something if he wants to introduce it, so.
Yeah, I don't believe we would need action necessarily, as long as I have the general consensus of the board that us moving forward and having those conversations is appropriate. I feel quite comfortable with that, so.
The only thought process I had was that if we as a body spoke on the issue, maybe it would have more clout with someone in the legislature.
Under our board policy, the board president can actually speak on your behalf, and I kind of at her discretion, and that could be an appropriate way to do that. So it would have also the weight of the board if you'd feel comfortable with that, so. I just gave her an assignment. She meant. So we talked about having something formally from you to communicate that we would like to have an interim study on this topic.
Yes,
so
I'd be happy
that'd
to do
appropriate
that.
way to handle it.
Just one last quick statement in behalf of teachers. All you have to do is look at the response from the survey of teachers. And what it says to me is that teachers are reaching out not only to us, but to all the legislature and everyone, to please help them find a way to make their classrooms safe, not only for them, but for their students. And when they reach out with those kind of numbers, we need to respond.
So we have one other bill we wanted to discuss a little bit. So Brian?
The past week, Senator Linehan filed a motion last week to have LB 651 placed on general file. It's a motion that's available under their rules for lots of new senators who've never seen this. This has been done numerous times in the past 50 years. Senator Chambers even got up and spoke about how he's used this tool on numerous occasions to do it. The legislature earlier this week took that up, and the bill did receive enough votes for the rule to kick in and the procedures to have the bill reported to general file. Senator Linehan has already filed an amendment to her bill, so I know there's ongoing discussions amongst lots of people, and apparently while I was watching the legislature bring 512 back, adopt an amendment, and move it to final reading, you had people here talking on that whole subject, so I know Rachel wanted to speak to it, so.
Thanks, Brian, and yes, and thank you, Mrs. Miller, and thank you, Mrs. Pinkerton. I think you did an outstanding job in the remarks that I have here to make as well today. We yesterday, as a legislative committee, discussed at length LB 651, the Adopt the Nebraska Reading Improvement Act, and feel strongly that the state board does already recognize the importance of early identification intervention for children not reading on grade level, and we believe that there are more things that we can do. We believe that with our strategic plan, we have started to move in that direction. We have goals that are looking at expectations for elementary schools to have evidence-based interventions for students who are not on reading level. We are looking at the assessment system that we just are moving forward with today, with adopting, that has elements that really can enhance process for assessment and really following students' reading levels and some of their needs and interventions, and that would be appropriate and support the instructional process of reading. I think we believe, though, that there's a balance, and that balance is the balance between the state board and local school districts. And I think we have a history of trying to honor that balance and trying to determine the direction that we go that creates a framework for accountability, but still recognizes the important balance that we have. We have locally elected officials throughout the state that have a responsibility to address the reading needs in their communities. And we have staff, administrators, and teachers that do take that to heart. Are there issues and areas for improvement? Certainly. Are there some things that we should look at in creating best practices around interventions and maybe providing leadership at the department level as a resource on best practices for intervention and assessment? Absolutely. But should we ever be in a position that we require students who are not on grade level in third grade to be retained? That is so beyond what the authority of the state legislature, in my opinion, and even the authority of the state board. That is a personal relationship that needs to be between the teacher and the parent at the local school district. And that relationship should be a relationship that is honored by elected officials in the state. And if that relationship has challenges in a local school district, then that locally elected school board needs to determine with their team what the best processes are. And for us to move in this state to a piece of legislation that I think this morning was stated very eloquently with the unintended consequences that are there, I think is in my opinion, really shameful spot for us to be in our state. So I do believe it's important for us to reach out and to encourage a direction. If we encourage a direction for a Nebraska Reading Improvement Act, that's fine. There are elements in the bill that really are very good. And there are elements in the bill that could have value, though they don't necessarily have to be done through a statutory process. So again, I think we just wanted to take a minute to reinforce that the State Board of Education did have opposition to this bill, and that we reaffirm that opposition to the bill, that if there are things we can do as a resource for Senator Linehan to look at how we can make some improvements, and whether we need a statutory direction for reading improvement, what that might look like, but how we can do that in a way that complements the work of the State Board and the strategic plan, that complements the work that we're doing for accountability, and that still maintains and honors a balance between locally elected officials and the State Board of Education. And Lisa.
I agree with Mrs. Pinkerton, Mrs. Miller, and Rachel eloquently expressing why this bill is not good. Whoops, I know. Sorry. Is it on?
It was on.
Oh. I'll get it one of these days. One of the things that we have been trying to do around the state is get more parental involvement. Here we have two examples of parents trying to get involved, and this bill is not going to be listening to the very people that are the most important in their children's lives, the parent. It should be between the parent, the teacher, and other experts in that school system to determine the direction that that child goes, along with everything else that's been said today. So we need the parental involvement. They're asking us to address this. We need to be listening to them. Thank you.
Pat, did you
I'll
have?
be-
Pat and then Maureen.
I'll be brief. I've often said that I'm concerned that we have children who are graduated from high school that can't read their diploma. Unfortunately, I think that's true. But I don't think this bill is the right means to do it as it is written. There are a lot of great things in this bill, and we ought to be talking about phonics, and we ought to be talking about the remedial efforts that start with beginning in kindergarten to start finding about, whether it's dyslexia or other issues, to try to determine what the reading difficulty is and take the action before they get to third grade and all of a sudden find out at third grade, hey, I can't read. And the bottom line is it also is a matter of local control. And I don't believe the state needs to exercise this kind of authority as far as retention. I think we've got to respect local control. Thank you.
Well, I just want to echo what everyone said, and Patrick, you pretty well took my words, and that was, we pride ourselves in this state, and as a school board, state school board, of our local control. And this to me, yes, is government overreach, and we need to leave it where it's at, and that being local control. And as you said, Lisa, our local elected members need to take accountability in their own districts and figure out what it is they need to do. So.
Just a brief remark, and it kind of relates to Senator Groney's bill about disruptive students. If you can't read, if school's a frustrating place to be, and I went to this health and education summit I reported to you out earlier this year, and I just want to bring a positive note in conjunction with this bill. Just making the rule every third grader reader doesn't make it happen. And it isn't just the early intervention, it even goes before kindergarten. They were talking about the brain architecture of kids in toxic environments. The cortisol levels are so high, they can't read. It isn't just because they don't have books, their brains are somewhere else. They are living, so it goes back to what you were talking about. We need to find some way to not intervene and punish by you can't graduate, you can't get out of third grade. We need to support the parents too, because a lot of parents would like to do better with their early childhood.
John, and then we have just a minute or two to finish up for the Legislative Committee report.
Thank you very much. I'd like to add also another part of the equation on this bill is regards to, we've talked about this several times in the past, that students, children, they learn at different paces. I mean, nobody's the same when it comes to their education achievement levels, whether it be fast, slow. I mean, they're not the same. And with this bill, you're saying they are the same or above. And we need to be aware of that.
Thank you. We have just one other item that's in the bill. Do you want to, or in the information, do you want to just talk about the federal
Sure.
document that you put in regarding the omnibus bill?
Right. When we met last, the 1st of April, the federal government was facing a shutdown at the end of April. Congress passed a 1-week resolution to keep it funding. Yesterday, they enacted a funding mechanism for the rest of the federal fiscal year that runs through September 30th. So that issue has been resolved at the congressional level. I attach for you a 6-page document that we get from CCSSO. You can look at pages 5 and 6 for the quick summary. Title I funding did go up a little bit. IDEA school age funding did go up a little bit. Title II did go down a little bit. It was not what the president had put out earlier in that regard, but some of that was part of what the commissioner also had the discussion with Secretary DeVos a week ago about better utilizing the teacher leader money under Title II to actually improve instruction, improve leadership, and everything else. But those were positive considering where we were when April was around and the federal government may be shutting down. So they have resolved their budget for the rest of this federal fiscal year through September 30th. And I'll stop there and see if you have any questions about the numbers.
That information is for you to review, and we will discuss it more next month from the Legislative Committee. Thank you, Brian, and that's the end of our report.
All
Thanks,
right,
Pat.
thank you, Rachel. We will now move into our hearings. Good morning. The State Board of Education is prepared to consider the disposition of case number 17-01, Commissioner versus Anthony Koister. The board has been provided with the record of the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission proceedings containing the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendations of the commission. All of the pleadings, exhibits, and a written transcript of the PPC are marked by the State Board as Exhibit 1. The notice of disposition hearing and the certified return receipts are remarked as Exhibit 2. If there is no objection, these will be received. We will first hear from a representative of the PPC, then the petitioner, and finally a representative of the respondent. Each representative will be given 10 minutes to present his or her statements. The board will not receive any additional evidence or testimony beyond that contained in Exhibits 1 and Exhibits 2. Will the representative of the Professional Practices Commission please come forward, be seated, and identify yourself?
Good morning. I'm Kelly Mothersbaugh. I'm here representing the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission on the matter of Matthew L. Bloomstead versus Anthony Kester. The commission found that the respondent failed to adhere to the terms of his contract with Lincoln Public Schools. The commission deliberated on the facts before it and recommends to the State Board of Education the respondent's certificate be suspended for a period of 1 year.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Will the petitioner please come forward, be seated, and identify yourself?
Brian Halstead, 301 Centennial Mall, South 6th floor, Lincoln, Nebraska 68509. On behalf of the Commissioner of Education, we are here to support the Professional Practices Commission's recommendation. It is consistent with numerous prior cases of contract abrogation, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have on the case.
Seeing none, will the respondent please come forward, be seated, and identify yourself? The record will reflect that the respondent did not appear. The proceedings are now closed. The board will make a determination in this matter at a later time. We will move on. The State Board of Education is prepared to consider the disposition of case number 17-2, Commissioner versus Christopher Berkey. The board has been provided with the record of the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission proceedings containing the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendation of the commission. All of the pleadings, exhibits, and a written transcript of the NPPC hearing are marked by the State Board as Exhibit 1. The notice of disposition hearing and the certified return receipts are marked as Exhibit 2. If there is no objection, these will be received. We will first hear from a representative of the NPPC, then the petitioner, and finally a representative of the respondent. Each representative will be given 10 minutes to present his or her statements. The board will not receive any additional evidence or testimony beyond that contained in Exhibits 1 and 2. Will the representative of the Professional Practices Commission please come forward, be seated, and identify yourself? Excuse me.
Again, I am Kelly Mothersbaugh, and I'm here representing the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission on the matter of Matthew L. Bloomstead versus Christopher Berg. The commission found that in September 2016, the respondent admitted to Millard school officials that he engaged in inappropriate text messages with a female student that began before the student graduated in May 2016 from the Millard School District. The commission deliberated on the facts before it and recommends to the State Board of Education that the respondent's certificate be revoked for a period of 5 years.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Will the petitioner please come forward, be seated, and identify yourself?
For the record, Brian Halstead, 301 Centennial Mall, South 6th floor, Lincoln, Nebraska 68509. On behalf of the Commissioner of Education, we are in support of the Commission's recommendation to you. The case is consistent with numerous prior cases that have involved inappropriate communications or violations of the student-teacher relationship by teachers, and as such, we would support a 5-year revocation of his certificate. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you might have about the case.
Does the board have any questions? Thank you, Brian. Will the respondent please come forward, be seated, and identify yourself? The record will reflect the respondent did not appear. This proceeding is now closed. The board will make a determination in this matter at a later time. The State Board of Education is prepared to consider the disposition of case number 17-03, Commissioner versus Dwayne Borchers. The board has been provided with the record of the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission proceedings containing the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the recommendation of the commission. All of the pleadings, exhibits, and a written transcript of the NPPC are marked by the State Board as Exhibit 1. The notice of disposition hearing and the certified return receipts are marked as Exhibit 2. If there is no objection, these will be received. We will first hear from a representative of the NPPC, then the petitioner, and finally a representative of the respondent. Each representative will be given 10 minutes to present his or her statements. The board will not receive any additional evidence or testimony beyond that contained in Exhibits 1 and 2. Will the representative of the Professional Practices Commission please come forward, be seated, and identify yourself?
Hello, I'm Kelly Mothersbaugh, and I'm here representing the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission on the matter of Matthew L. Bloomstead versus Dwayne Borchers. The commission found that the respondent was found guilty by the Lancaster County Court of solicit prostitution, a misdemeanor, and was fined $250. The commission deliberated on the facts before it and recommends to the State Board of Education that the respondent's certificate be revoked for a period of 2 years.
Any questions? Will the petitioner please come forward, be seated, and identify yourself?
For the record, Brian Halstead, 301 Centennial Mall South, 6th floor, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68509. On behalf of the Commissioner of Education, we're here in support of the Commission's recommendation for a 2-year revocation of Mr. Borcher's certificate. It is consistent with, unfortunately, numerous prior cases that have come before this board in the past 20 years about immoral conduct by teachers and criminal convictions. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have about the case.
Questions? Thank you, Brian. Will the respondent please come forward, be seated, and identify yourself? The record will reflect that the respondent did not appear. This proceeding is now closed. The board will make a determination in this matter at a later date. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
I move that the state board go into executive session to deliberate and receive advice from legal counsel on contested cases.
Is there a second? Second. Brenda?
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
Rachel Weiss,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricky,
Yes.
Patsy Kojans.
Yes.
8 yes.
The board will now go into executive session only for the purpose of receiving advice from legal counsel on contested cases for the protection of the public interest. to leave the executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Brenda? Patsy did the motion and Maureen seconded.
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
Rachel Weisz,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricky.
Yes.
Patsy Co-Johns.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you. We will now move into our action items. Our first action item is to consider the PPC's recommendation decision in NDE case number 17-01, Commissioner versus Anthony Kester.
Madam President, I
Yes.
move in Commissioner versus Anthony Keister, NDE case number 1701, that this board reject the recommendation of the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission suspending respondent's teaching certificate for 1 year. This rejection is based on a question relative to Mr. Keister's leave of absence request and of the sufficiency of the record presented.
Is there a
Second.
Thank you.
Rachel Weisz,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricky.
Yes.
Patsy Co-Johns.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
8 yes.
We move on to 7.1B. Consider the PPC's recommended decision in NDE case number 17-02, Commissioner versus Christopher Burke.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I move in Commissioner versus Christopher Burke, NDE case number 17-02, that this board adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the recommendation of the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission, revoking respondent's teaching certificate for a period of 5 years, and to adopt the final order proposed by our legal counsel.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran,
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricky.
Yes.
Patsy Co-Johns.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
Rachel Weisz.
Yes.
8 yes.
We move to 7.1.C. Consider the PPC's recommended decision in NDE case number 17-03, Commissioner versus Dwayne Borch.
Madam President, I move in Commissioner versus Dwayne Borchers, NDE case number 17-03, that this board adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the recommendation of the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission, revoking respondent's teaching certificate for a period of 2 years, and to adopt the final order proposed by legal counsel.
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran,
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricky.
Yes.
Patsy Co-Johns.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
Rachel Weisz.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you, Leslie. Our next items on the action part of the agenda is our AQuest Teaching and Learning Domain Committee report, and we do have some motions. We spent a very good amount of time yesterday discussing these, but we still want to be sure everyone has the information that they need as we move forward. So Maureen, is there a motion?
Yes, Madam President, I move to authorize the Commissioner to contract with ACT for 2017-2018 assessment for grade 11.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Does anyone still have any questions or comments? Patrick?
I just want to thank staff for getting me some information I requested on that. So thank you very much for being so responsive.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, please call the roll.
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
Rachel Weiss.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes?
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricky,
Yes.
Patsy Ko-Johns.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you. Maureen?
Yes. I move to authorize the Commissioner to contract with Data Recognition Corporation, DRC, for 2017, 2018 alternate assessment for grades 3 through 8 and 11.
I second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion? Your votes, please.
Rachel Weiss.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran,
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricky,
Yes.
Patsy Ko-Johns.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you. Maureen?
I move to authorize the Commissioner to contract with the Northwest Evaluation Association, NWEA, for 2017 and 2018 for assessment for grades 3 through 8.
I second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Patrick?
Yes, I just, again, I'd like to reiterate the fact that by adopting these 3 tests, the Department of Education has actually saved local school boards somewhere around $3 million or so, it looks like to me, and possibly reduce some testing time. So I think this is just, I know that school boards across the state are concerned about funding. I know that the legislature is concerned about funding, but I think this is a case where the state board has really stepped up and has done something to reduce the cost not only to school districts, but also to many parents that might be paying for the ACT exams as well. So, and at least giving an opportunity for these children to take the pre-tests, and again, if they want, they'll have the experience of having taken the ACT, and they can take it again if they need to. So I think this is I think the board has really acted responsibly there, and I think we've done something to help parents and school boards, school districts across the state in a financial sense. So thank you.
Rachel?
And I just would like to add on to that the importance that this plays from an instructional perspective, and in particularly for a student perspective. If you have the opportunity to see how MAPS works in schools and students starting to set their goals about the growth and the direction they need to take, and you interface that with at the high school and the ACT and the goals that students start to set, I think this is really a much more student-focused direction that will continue to improve instruction opportunities for kids in Nebraska.
Thank you. Anyone else? Patsy?
I just want to speak for all the kids that are challenged socially, economically, because over the years I would ask young people if they were taking the ACT, and many times those kids that were challenged in that way didn't even realize what an ACT was. And so now not only do they have the opportunity to take that test, someone will be actually guiding them to the test and helping prepare them for the test. So great day for our action today.
Good. Lisa?
The MAPS testing, if you've used it, it's awesome. And the NISA, you'd have to wait till August for results, and the teacher doesn't have that immediate feedback to help the students in the individual areas of weakness. So there's so much on board that I'm excited about for how the staff has put together a great plan for our state that will be very beneficial for our students. So thank you for that.
Molly?
And I just have a comment and a request in regard to NWEA doing assessments for grade to 3 to 8. I think our teachers are ready for some stability. This adaptive testing really will engage students where they are the 3 times, and those are for free. I mean, I think it was cool they threw those in.
I will be interested next year to see what kind of alignment we have between NWEA, the 3 testing windows, and how they do on the summative tests. It'll be so cool to see how they pull out the coordination between what our teachers have developed and their own testing lines. And this is the first in the nation. So I think it's going to be an interesting year.
I think it will be. John?
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Valerie Foy for all the work that she has done in regards to accomplishing this feat. Thank you very much, Valerie. Outstanding. Some of our administrators out in our districts are very, very happy with this due to the fact that they are very concerned about the interim assessment. The interim assessment, I'll give you an example for a large-sized school. The state is literally picking up the tab for one school, $65,000 just to cover this interim assessment, and they are very, very grateful to the state. So thank you very much.
Anyone else? Important work.
Good.
Patsy Co-Johns,
Yes.
Lisa Fricke,
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
8 yes.
Okay, Maureen, one more.
One more. I move to grant the Commissioner the authority to amend a contract with ACS Ventures for standard setting and independent alignment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second was Rachel. Any discussion? Okay, your votes, please.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricke.
Yes.
Patsy Co-Johns.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
8 yes.
Okay, thank you. Lots of hard work done and very productive. I think it will boost our system of accountability tremendously. Okay, we'll move on to 7.3, Student Success and Access Domain Committee. Molly, does your committee have motions?
I move to approve the classification of interim program schools as approved to operate for the 2017-2018 school year under Rule 18, 92 NAC 18, regulations and procedures for the approval of interim program schools in county detention homes, institutions, and juvenile emergency shelters.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Your votes, please.
Lisa Fricke.
Yes.
Patsy Co-Johns.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
8 yes.
Okay.
I move to approve accreditation for the educational service units appearing on the accompanying list for the 2017-2018 school year in accordance with the provisions of Rule 84, 92 NAC 84, regulations for educational service units.
I second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, your votes, please.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricke.
Yes.
Patsy Co-Johns.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
8 yes.
I move to grant the Commissioner the authority to approve funding recommendations for 2-year opportunity grants funded by the Expanding Learning Opportunity Grant Program.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Any discussion? Your votes, please.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricke.
Yes.
Patsy Co-Johns.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
8 yes.
Yes. Okay, we will move on to the Policy Committee. And I'm asking for a motion to approve proposed revisions to State Board Policy B13, agendas, meeting material for regular meetings. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
There's a second?
I second.
Are we ready? Okay.
Molly O'Halloran. Yes. John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricky.
Yes.
Patsy Ko-Johns.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
Rachel Weisz.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
8 yes.
Okay, I'm asking for a motion on G21, and I would add, legal counsel has called to our attention that under cross-reference at the bottom, there's one more cross-reference that we need to add. Below 92 NAC 10, we need to add 79-712 RRS. So it has nothing to do with the content of the of the policy, is just making sure that all the cross-references are there. So I do have a motion to that effect.
I move to approve the proposed revisions with the amendment offered to State Board Policy G21, Policy for Coordinated School Health.
I'd second.
Any discussion? Your votes, please.
Patsy Ko-Johns.
Yes.
Lisa Fricky.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Rachel Weisz.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
8 yes.
Okay, we'll move to 7.6, Budget and Finance. John?
Thank you. I move we authorize the Commissioner to approve an IT contract for the Disability Determinations section.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, your votes, please.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricky.
Yes.
Patsy Ko-Johns.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
Rachel Weisz.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you. We will move to item 8. This is, oh, I'm sorry. We keep changing these.
You can do 8 and come back to it.
Well, I'm gonna do 8, and then we're gonna come back to 7.7. Because I want to.
All right, you're the president.
That's right. We will do these action items because I know we have a board member that needs to.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricky.
Yes.
Patsy Ko-Johns.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
Rachel Weisz.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you. Now, we will move back to 7.7 and pick up several items that we carried over from the work session yesterday on strategic planning.
I'm gonna take the timer.
Going to time yourself?
I'm gonna time myself.
Okay.
We'll see how we do. I am gonna pull up a little bit of the PowerPoint slides and set a bit of a context since it's been since yesterday. Uh-oh.
Got a whole 24 hours.
I need a user password on that. So, first of all, I'll just kind of start by saying that part of what we wanted to cover, we had a couple different items that we didn't quite get to in the retreat agenda. The first of those really was following up a little bit on the ESSA timing, and so we thought we'd go ahead and present some of that information to you, as well as, I think what the PowerPoint slide is. Which presentation is it? Yeah, I think that one. Anyway, so so we'll go through a little bit of that information, and then I wanted to walk back through just to give context, since this is now kind of in another setting. And I wanted to walk back through just a little bit of the system of support to give context to the whole presentation, and then if you had any questions or conversation at that point, I think that would be ideal. So watch this. I'm going to try 5 minutes, see how I go, because I know I might be the worst. So anyway.
You are, man.
Yeah, and I know. I hate to have you all agree with me so much, but I'll go to the. Yeah. There we go. So I'll have them bring that up. I talked to you a little bit yesterday about the dynamic system of supports and how it ties obviously into the whole AQuest system. And clearly what we're trying to accomplish is always a system that helps our students be successful. And we have different ways that we can do that. Sometimes we're trying to support school districts, sometimes we're trying to support students specifically. Even our conversations today around assessment and supporting a better approach to how we integrate things that we have to do to ensure that we're improving educational outcomes for our students across the state. And so I really thank you for your dedication on that. This particular chart would say, hey, look, we know that we have students that need additional support regardless of what type of school that they happen to be in underneath our AQuest classification. We know that we have students that might need additional support that are in excellent schools. We know that we have students that might need support within our needs improvement schools, but realistically our aim, our goal, our target is to ensure that we're providing the proper supports and that the school system as a whole is providing the proper supports for our students. We've walked through this many times and this concept, but I thought it was important to talk a little bit about, we're thinking about what our support levels are, and I'm going to walk through this fairly quickly, but we have a theory, I guess, a theory of how we're going to make change happen in schools, but we assume a certain thing that schools that are operating and being classified as excellent, that they have capacity to operate as excellent. And those schools on the other side of the equation, needs improvement, maybe don't have all the capacity. And we're actually trying to find ways to improve that level of capacity. Part of our work with the NDE is thinking about how we, instead of just thinking about how we treat everyone equally, that we're actually focused on equity. And in order to be equitable, we actually might have to provide additional supports to those places that lack the capacity to improve on their own. That's been our theory underneath that NDE support. That's really going to be our theory of action as we take on ESSA and the ESSA plan, that we're trying to target resources to those schools that need it most, and again, those students that need it most. And so that's our philosophy at the agency and part of what we're trying to accomplish. We also know that treating everyone equally also has the reverse of that. When we're talking about compliance, when we treat everyone equally, everyone has to follow the same rules and regulations, and to a certain extent that's absolutely true, but where we can find discretion for schools that are otherwise doing quite well, we have that chance to do that. One of our conversations is, what's our cycle of accountability need to look like? What's our cycle of accreditation need to look like? How do we tie those concepts together? And those places that are doing well and doing experiencing success and have that additional capacity, perhaps we're not even ourselves burning up our own capacity, spending extra time in the compliance side. And instead, how can we turn compliance and leverage compliance into a support system with other schools? So where we try to be a bit more prescriptive with schools, it's important that we find a way to accomplish that. And that's what I mean by that kind of local discretion column, that hopefully we can think about that as a philosophy. But we can't get anything done unless our school districts can get their work done and have the capacity necessary and target that capacity. I put the learning community on here, given what we've done with the community achievement plan. I think our focus in on that was about how do we support the places that need that additional support, and even working with our ESUs. And so there are several different ways that I think we can look at that partnership, but ensure that everyone's looking at somewhat the same data, targeting resources where they're needed most, being a good partner in that, and we have lots of other partners that can be part of that philosophy as well. There's some themes for our future work that I think are quite important, and it addresses this, and we have, and I was going to say this is not at all comprehensive, not even close, but we've talked a lot about accountability and supports for improvement. How we build that system is a lot of our work. How do we go about doing that? It's that alignment piece that I think is so critical to us. How we look at school accreditation under Rule 10, how we look at ESU accreditation under Rule 84, early childhood under Rule 11, Rule 51 with special ed. I'm missing a lot of different rules that we have, but the reality is I'm just trying to give you some themes that I think are important. Obviously, even in the teacher prep and certification, a lot of different rules. We just have some advancing through the process right now, but how do we continue to ensure that we have a great system to support our teachers to be excellent? And then stakeholder engagement has been critical for us to listen to our stakeholders, figure out how we do that. And see, with that, my 5 minutes is up. I know yesterday, I'm not going to hold myself completely to it, but I was going to, you know I wanted.
Yeah.
But the reality for us, when you reviewed that and you looked at those 7 questions from the NASB piece, it was important that we continue to actually kind of move forward in asking those questions. How do we get that aligned? Our ESSA work going forward, and I could probably cover this. Brian was going to help me out a little bit. If I missed something, Brian can help me. Our ESSA work, we have a team working on our first draft. We intend on having a public draft by the time that we get to the June meeting. You'll have a chance to look at some of the background materials, ask your questions about, and you're still doing some stakeholder engagement work yourselves. Like, we still need information. We're not done writing this even when it's released in June. Our intention is to make sure that we've listened to as many people as possible across the state, make sure that we've done our work, make sure that's included, or if folks wanted something from a stakeholder perspective, how do we address those types of issues? And really, you're a very important part of that whole process, even at the federal level, when they look for folks to sign off on it. Obviously, the State Board of Education in Nebraska is critical to that, but you're critical beyond that because you've set up the theory of action. You've given us direction by having a strategic plan. We're getting that work aligned, and I'm actually quite proud of where we're at this moment in time on those things. So thank you to the team of people that have been working on this. And no one has this as in their job description currently to write the ESSA plan. They're all doing it. I'm telling you, I get emails at 2 in the morning. I get emails at 10 at night. I get emails at 4 in the morning. The reality is we have a lot of dedicated staff doing this work, and I can't thank them enough for what they've done. And they do that on top of their regular jobs, which are actually quite pressing too. So the reality is I have a great deal of respect and admiration for what our team does here, and a great deal of respect and admiration for what you've done to lead this effort. So thanks.
Does anyone have any more comments, or you wrote things down yesterday? I saw a lot of you writing down on the questionnaire that you were given. So
Microphone, they say.
Do I have to say it again?
If you want people watching online to hear it.
So,
Yesterday, we were given a list of questions that would cause us to think about the ESSA plan and how we were putting all of our work together. And I saw lots of you writing things down. And so is there anyone that has anything? Molly?
I just have a request. All of us have this sheet from Don Lynn, and I would be really interested if we gave all of our sheets to Donalyn, if she could compile them, so we could actually have a digital resource to look at ourselves, and then it might be helpful for her as well.
Okay.
Because it might take us a long time if each of us went through every question, but if we give it to her, if she wouldn't mind compiling it, and then your staff could also utilize our input.
Well,
I think that would be excellent, by the way. So
I think
would be
that is an
terrific.
excellent idea, and once that's compiled, if she could send it out to us, before the next meeting, and then we can think about that.
And this is my
Excellent.
secondary question. It might be easier for Donalyn if she sends this to us digitally and we type in our comments. That way she can just,
Either way is fine.
yeah. Because she's not here, Rachel's gone. And we might, if you send it to us, we might be able to type a more coherent suggestions.
Okay.
To add in the graph.
I think that's an excellent idea, and she won't have to
Rewrite,
handwriting.
type everything, yeah.
I will give you the option if you want to leave it with me or take it, but I will send you the file.
Thank you, Donalyn. I think that will be very helpful. John?
Yes, I'd just also like to point out that we've been in contact, if you will, with NASB in regards to our journey with ESSA. And we got a little notice from NASB saying that, and this reflects what you just said, Molly, we're doing great work here in Nebraska, and we're right on the right track. And I thought that was really nice reinforcement from the association.
Absolutely. Lisa?
Yesterday, it was brought up about a survey that's going out, and that I'm not really social media savvy, but I know that's the way to go. So when might the general survey and the wording changes go out?
I think it's soon. I don't know exactly. Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Oh.
So this is Janine Tyler, she's gonna help me.
Thank you, Janine.
All right.
And she's done a lot of wonderful work, so
Can I
I'm
just-
thinking to thank her personally, yeah, just.
Yeah. We created a survey that has some embedded videos. And so the videos provide foundational information so that those who are responding to the survey can respond in an informed manner. The survey was still designed, though, for those who have a general knowledge of the educational system. So if we were to send a survey to the general public, I don't know that the general public would be able to respond to this survey in a way that the responses would be informed responses. And I don't want anyone to engage in a survey that would make them feel self-conscious about their answers, or that the answers might be uninformed. So if we want a general public survey, that's a little bit different survey.
I think that's really, really important that it's on, because the input, it's important from every walk of life in Nebraska, especially parents and community members. And I agree with you. We need to make it easy for them to understand, so they understand what they're replying to. And I think that needs to go out pretty soon. Is that doable in the near future? And then we could get a link, and I'm ready to be social activist and get that on my Facebook page, because I think the everyday person's input is just as important as everybody else's.
Okay, Patsy? If you've tried to give the one that we were given, I mean, I went out right away to talk to people with that. People who are in education jump right in the middle of that, and they have ideas, but people who are not in education were very put off by that, and I would have to translate and redefine and that sort of thing. So a survey for the general public most definitely is needed, and needed quickly.
And it needs to be modified.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was going to be my comment. I think it needs to be much more concise and short.
Okay.
Quick question, Pat.
John?
Matt, I take it that the ESSA plan is a living plan. In other words, it's almost like our strat plan, that even after we submit the final draft, we will continually updating the plan with engagement populations in it.
Yeah, and number one, I think the key part on the stakeholder engagement side of this, there is specific details that they require us to get feedback on, which changes the audience that you might normally go reach out to. I think there's two things happening for us relative to how we think about stakeholder engagement, because I don't know necessarily that everyone has a great, in fact, I laugh and joke a little bit about it, you know, when you say, hey, look, we're writing a federal plan, why doesn't everyone just show up? Why wouldn't they be interested in that? I can't understand. But I think there are key things that we have to start to think about in how we generally gather input on a lot of different topics. And so what we're using the ESSA planning process, the strategic planning processes, all that we're doing is to have a much more comprehensive engagement process with our public, with our students, with our parents, with our school officials, with, you know, on and on. So I don't see an end to stakeholder engagement in our work. It's not just about the ESSA plan, and I want folks to be comfortable that we continue to gather as much as we can for specifically that purpose. But I'm actually much more interested in asking other questions, just like public comment today is a very important part of the process in which we go, hey, look, people agree on certain topics on what's right for our kids in the state of Nebraska. I think that's what we could do, John, and not just be, like you're saying, a plan that's on the shelf and an engagement that just happens once. This is about making it part of how we operate.
Absolutely.
Patsy?
Well, this is quick, but Donaldin asked us, as we listened to you yesterday, to write down words in each of those sections that, you know, related to what you were saying, and we felt was important. And throughout every single one of those, I looked at the word communication, kept reappearing, no matter who was speaking, no matter what they were talking about. And people are honored to be given the chance to communicate, to say what they think, or even how they feel. And that, then they bond with us, then they want to work with us. And so you said it yourselves yesterday, and I wrote it down.
So you're gonna hold me to it, is what I'd say. But I think it's exactly what we need to do. And even internally, it's a difficult thing for us to get this done.
Thank you,
Janine walked away. Thank Janine one more time. But the reality is, even internally, it's changing how we think about communications and how we engage. Because if we want to just keep doing the things the way that we've always done them, that's pretty easy to communicate. When you start to try to communicate that we want to do things differently and we want changes to take place, that's not always a comfortable conversation. And so our work is in building relationships and truly understanding what makes a difference for students. That's our goal. That's what your strategic plan gives me as a tool to say, hey, look, clearly this is where the state board is trying to go. I think that is kind of the turning point for us as a state, that we are in control of our school system. We're designing our system. We're not having someone at the federal level design it. And we're partnering appropriately with the legislature and others in the design of this. We take our role, our responsibility seriously in what we're supposed to do. And I hear that every meeting, and I think we continue to say that, and I don't know, I know I sound like a broken record on that, but that's our constancy of purpose. That's how keeping a clear vision and direction for what we want in the state is going to make a difference.
Well, and and I'll get you, Molly. Last night, Maureen and I had the opportunity to meet a teacher from Texas, and her son is going to school here for his first year, and she's not a Texan. She's originally from Chicago, and spent most of her life there, and then her husband's job took her to Texas. And so having the Illinois perspective, the Nebraska perspective, and what she's doing now in Texas, we had a really interesting and fun conversation. But, it was very nice to say, Nebraska knows how to do it, and we do it. And we continue to do it. And I think this public engagement piece, and we've always had public engagement, it just hasn't been as visible because we've had input from teachers and we have public hearings and, all of those sorts of things. But this is really elevating what we're doing, and so it was really nice to give our side of it and say, here's what we're doing. Molly.
I was just going to comment like a general opinion about this scorecard as well. When I looked at this, it made me think about Don Lynn a lot. And Don Lynn's only going to be with us one more month. But Don Lynn, I wanted just to say to you, you've always been so good about respecting people of different opinions, and different board members come and go, and you really empower us. And as I look at this scorecard, I also see us in Nebraska Department of Ed and the State Board of Education. It's never about our power and pushing people. It's really about that authentic, respectful communication. So I wanted to thank you and just tell you you've been wonderful.
Yeah, we'll get her to cry next month. We'll pull that off. So.
Okay.
But thank you. My time is way over.
Okay. Thank you. All right. We do not have any special presentations this month, so we will move on. I mentioned another meeting. We'll ask for approval of the meeting participation. And if you remember correctly, the commissioner brought up the School Mental Health Summit that is happening in Kearney, Scotts Bluff, and La Vista, and I'm not real sure where else. Anyway, we do have a couple people that are going to attend in their area. And so those are on the list, and we have added also, that's kind of a way to think, but Administrator Days is on there, so if you're interested and can, please, so, Patrick?
I'd like to tentatively go to the career education conference, but it's 4 days it looks like. That's could the commissioner or someone give me a schedule on that before we book me on that, because that's kind of lengthy. And there's also that mental health right out there on the 9th as well, as it looks like, so.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll do that.
Kearney.
all right.
I think it might be easier for me to be in Kearney as well. Is there a problem if there's two of us in Kearney?
Mal
It's
have
all
to-
happening in the same day, so
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
really.
yeah.
I will find that one out because it is by invitation only.
Yeah,
And so we'll have to,
Okay.
I'll have the commissioner find out for you.
if we're welcome.
And I'd like to add my name to that list if there's the possibility
can
of
go.
having additional.
On the
ones.
behavioral health one, is that what you're?
It's huge.
On the yes, on the mental.
So,
health.
yeah,
So
which names do we have down right now?
Right now, Lisa has requested to go to ESU 3 in La Vista, and Molly was requesting to go to ESU 13 in Scottsbluff.
But I'm gonna go to, I think Kearney is,
Closer for her.
Kearney, it's the same meeting. If I can go
Yeah.
to Kearney, it's closer.
You want to go to Kearney
It's
instead?
closer, it's closer.
Okay.
Lisa, I think you're.
I just figured that out.
Okay.
I can't go from DC to my neighborhood in La Vista. That training
Okay,
for
and so
Patsy
we
and
Madam
will-
I.
Chairman, I'd also consider going to the mental health one in Kearney if it works into that schedule.
Because
with
we're in
that
the
other
same
conference.
place, that's
Yeah.
why
Yeah,
the
well,
crowd.
we'll, those of you that,
Saves
that
money.
more than one person wants to attend,
Yeah.
I'll leave that to the commissioner to
That's
get
fine.
that figured out.
That's fine.
John? 'Cause
So
John's
what
interested.
I'll try to do is I'll circle around with all of you who showed an interest, and I'll see. Maybe they let everyone go who wants to go. I just don't know for sure. So.
Right, okay. So is there a motion to approve the meeting participation?
make the motion.
Second.
Okay,
I think that's huge. That
please
will-
call the roll.
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
Rachel Weiss. Oh,
Absent.
sorry. Put that down. Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricky,
Yes.
Patsy Co-Johns.
Yes.
7 yes, 1 absent.
Okay. There are information items and written reports in your e-meetings for your enjoyment later. And I will now adjourn the meeting. A work session will be, oh, I'm sorry.
I haven't looked through the mail, but do you know if the PowerPoint, your PowerPoint got sent as?
We can double check.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll do that.
all right, thank you.
Patrick?
And can I also make a request? I'm looking at the contracts approved by the commissioner, and a number of those are for summer enrichment programs. At least one of those may have some, raise a red flag for me in a sense. I guess I'm just looking forward to seeing some kind of report at the end of the summer on these programs, and,
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll do.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay. A work session will be held on Thursday, June 1st at 2 p.m. and a board meeting will be held on Friday, June 2nd at 9 a.m. in this room. Thank you all for all your hard work. This meeting is adjourned.